You guys want to hear a story about a guy who saw the Mothman in Appalachia, had a horrible experience, and then had some type of special agent show up to his house afterwards? So back in the 1970s, a guy named Reese lived in this tiny West Virginia community called Addison. It was the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and the river was basically the town's backyard. So Reese wasn't a very social guy, so after work, he would just take his tiny little motorboat out on the Ohio River and he would fish. Now, he would do this long after the sun disappeared behind the hills. One night, near an area that locals called Brian's Run, basically a lonely pocket of woods pressed right up against these old railroad tracks, he was just packing up when he hears this sound echoing across the water. It didn't sound like an animal or a person, it was like something in between, he said. He said it was like this long broken cry that rose and fell like it was in pain. Thinking that somebody may be hurt, he guided his boat towards the shoreline, but the closer that he got to the shoreline, the weirder the sound got. It was like something was trying to communicate but failing. So he ties his boat, he grabs his flashlight, and he steps into the dark trees. Now up ahead, he sees what looks like this tangled mound of brush or branches. So at first he's thinking this is just a collapsed tree limb, right? But then it shuddered very slightly, almost like something was breathing underneath it. So he raises his flashlight to get a better look, and before the beam even reached it, the entire pile just lurches upward in one movement, like something was literally unfolding itself from the ground. As he's watching this happen, a rush of air just slams into him. He said that it literally felt like his bones were rattling. His flashlight then flies out of his hand because of this gush of wind, and then he sees something. He only sees the outline of it, but it's impossibly tall, human-shaped, but wrong. He said it had broad shoulders, enormous wings tucked behind its back, two burning red eyes reflecting the faintest bits of moonlight. At this point, he's like, I do not need to see any more. F this. He turns around, he starts running through the branches, and he is running so fast that these branches are whipping at his face. And then behind him, he hears another cry, louder though, sharper, and he swore he could hear wings beating against the air above the treetops following him. He finally bursts into the road. He gets onto the roadside. He's shaking, out of breath. Minutes later, a trucker drives by and he flags him down and he's like, can you please give me a ride back to town? I have to get out of here. So the trucker gives him a ride home. He gets home. He goes to lay down in bed that night. He cannot sleep that night. But oh, it does not end there. The next morning, Reese calls a friend, and it's the only person that he trusts enough to believe him. Now, after talking to his friend, him and his friend drive back to the site to go get his boat, because remember, he had left his boat there. When they reach the shoreline, his friend just stops dead in his tracks, because where the boat should have been, nothing but blackened wooden ribs, still warm like they had burned recently. There's no sign of a campfire, no discarded matches, there was no sign that anyone had been there at all. Just a perfectly burned out boat. Now, Reese at this point is very upset, and so he decides he's going to go to the sheriff. Now, as he's talking to the sheriff is just kind of listening to him quietly, and then when he's finished talking, the sheriff says, don't worry, we'll look into it. But Reese said that the calmness in his voice was just wrong, like almost like he had already known more than he should. So Reese is like, okay, whatever. So he goes home and he sees his wife, and his wife looks a little rattled, and he's like, what's going on? And she says, a man came by looking for you. She described him in a black suit, black hat, dark sunglasses in the middle of rural West Virginia. No name, no reason for being there. He only wanted to know where Reese was. Now, Reese and his wife were like, we're not waiting for answers. They pack up their bags and they leave town that very night. No goodbyes, no explanation. Years later, Reese finally told the full story to one of his friends, and he said that he had no doubt in his mind that this creature was the Mothman. And he believes that the man who came afterward wasn't human either. The boat, no animal burns a boat into clean ashes. Something or someone wanted to erase what Reese saw. So what did you guys think about this story? Number one, I do have to credit the original poster. It came from Addison, West Virginia, Mothman encounter, and it was shared publicly online. I'm not sure exactly where. It was like Spooky Appalachia or something. I do not like retelling stories without giving the person credit, so I will try to tag them in some way, or I will put it in the caption. This is a real encounter though. The original poster posted it anonymously and she just retold it, so this is me retelling it from her. But yeah, what do you guys think about that story? That was so creepy. First of all, the creepiest part to me is the Mothman, obviously, or whatever that thing was, that would have terrified me, but the person showing up at his door afterwards looking for him, that would just creep me out. And the fact that he thinks it wasn't human, I wonder why he thinks that that person wasn't human. I wish I could talk to this person. Do you guys think this was the Mothman? Do you think it was something else? Do you think maybe it was some type of alien? Like, who was that person that showed up at the doorstep? Again, I want to know. I don't know. This is so creepy. And the fact that his boat burned down, why do you think that? What does the boat have to do with anything? They said so that everything that he saw could be erased, but the boat doesn't have eyes. The boat didn't see anything. It was him. And people obviously fish on that lake or that river or whatever it was, so I don't understand why the boat got burned down. So if someone could please help me understand that, drop it in the comments. Also, if you have any questions, I'll try to find the answers for you. Drop those in the comments.
This story is proof that if you ever hear a crying baby in the woods, you definitely didn't, and you need to go in the opposite direction. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous. He is so terrified by even retelling the story that he has never told a soul until now. Mario grew up in a small little town located in Lázaro, Mexico. Growing up, all the people in the town would always talk about weird things happening in the woods, but nothing ever happened to him, so he never really believed any of it. Until one night, him and his friend Eli are riding bikes. They're about 14 years old at the time. They're riding their bikes through the woods just like they typically do. They take a shortcut that cuts through the woods into their neighborhood. On this particular day, it was starting to get kind of later than usual. They start to hear a faint cry of a baby coming from a distance. Terrified, they're thinking that maybe somebody abandoned a baby in the woods. Like, that you would hear so many crazy things, so many different tales, that they decided to kind of investigate and go further into the woods to try to figure out where this baby crying was coming from. As they're going deeper and deeper into the woods, they start to realize that it's getting darker and darker, and the cries just get further and further away. They finally reach like this one opening. Mind you, they're super far away from everybody at this point. It's like this small opening that they reach in the woods, and they feel like literally the air and like the whole environment, like all of like the normal nature sounds that you would hear, like the birds chirping or like the leaves, everything just stops and it's dead silence. That's when they see her. Looking over one of the bushes, they see a woman crouched down. Her hair is all tangled, her face looks all dirty, and she has this very menacing smile, almost as if like she shouldn't even be smiling, but she's forcing herself to smile. Too terrified to really do anything, both boys just kind of stand there staring at her. And then they see when she slowly kind of sits up, and they see that she's wearing like this long dress that's all raggedy and dirty and full of like stains. And just as if she's getting up, they hear or they see when she opens her mouth and she makes that crying baby sound. The crying baby was coming from her mouth. She was making the sound. Mario grabbed Eli's arm and they took off as fast as possible. As they're riding their bikes, mind you, they're racing through the woods. They can hear right behind their heads like tree branch like cracking, and they can hear laughing. It's like this thing is literally following them on all fours. Like she's going at the same speed that they're going. After what felt like forever, the boys finally made it out into the parking lot. As they're making their way into the parking lot, they're completely terrified. They look over, they see a man sitting in his truck. The man looks over and sees that both boys are completely out of breath and they are terrified. So he jumps out of his truck and he goes up to them and asks, like, are you okay? Like, what happened? Like, did something happen to you? And the boys explain to him what happened. The man then tells them that they should have never been in the woods so late at night because there were witches that hid in there, and there have been many people that had gone missing throughout the years. Have you ever had any weird experiences while being in the woods? I feel like the woods have so many like hidden secrets that no one really knows about, and it is the reason why so many people go missing every single year.
So this week I decided to read some of the stories that I usually read like on my own time and don't share with you guys, because honestly I'm like, wait, these stories are so good, why do I not make videos out of these? So I hope you like them. If you don't, I'm sure you'll let me know. And yes, they're creepy, scary, and just wait. This story is called 3 a.m. My cousin recently moved here from India. On a recent road trip exploring America, we were shooting shit and exchanging ghost stories and laughing at similarities and differences between American ghost stories and Indian ghost stories. When I asked her if she's ever experienced anything supernatural, her eyes widened and she averted her eyes to the window. Just when the silence was about to be too much for me, she softly responded, yes, a few. One is troubling, and this is her story. When I was the second year in college, I stayed at an all-girl hostel. I made many friends. We were all very happy to be in school away from our conservative parents. The hostel was so much fun, but it was a very old building. Electricity was only put in the room. Sometimes candles were placed along the windows if a watchman was present, but normally once you left the rooms, you were faced with complete darkness. It's common to wake up someone if you needed to walk down to the restroom at the end of the hall. We all had a childish childish fear of being alone in the dark. One night, I had to use the restroom. It was around 3 in the morning. I went to my friend's bed and tapped her on the arm. She immediately opened her eyes as soon as I touched her. I apologized for bothering her and told her I needed to pee. She smiled at me and hopped out of bed. All the way down the hallway, she laughed and danced. I could not see her at all, but her bangles clanked together loudly and the bells on her ankles jingled softly. It was very calming. I laughed and sashayed my hips down the hallway with her, too tired to match elaborate arm movements. She said nothing to me, though occasionally I heard her hum one of our favorite Bollywood songs. The same thing happened on our return. I fell back asleep easily. I awoke fairly late the next morning to the sound of men in our room. They surrounded her bed. I bolted from my bed, prepared to protect my friend, when I realized they were administrators of the college. I peered over closer. My friend's lifeless eyes were fixated on my bed, the same smile on her face. She ended her life. Her time of death was 11:30 p.m., almost 5 hours before I woke her to go to the restroom with me.
Scary story time while I fix store-bought slime sent in by my supporters. Disclaimer, y'all, this is not my story. It was sent in by a supporter, and this slime is called Rainbow Sherbet, and it's from the Dollar Tree. Jumping into it, you got this girl named Savannah. Now, oh, it smells good. Now, yeah, for this summer, Savannah decided she was going to go on a camping trip with her brother and some of his friends. Okay. Anyway, now for some reason they decided that they wanted to go camping in the middle of freaking nowhere. Why? I don't know. They're gonna be camping on a mountain, so they had to take so they had to take this trail to get to the camping area, y'all. But for some reason the trail that they were trying to go on was completely blocked, so they had to kind of go around the trail. Never do that, y'all. If the trail is blocked, go home. Now, Savannah's brother was like, we should go home. Like, we should go home. And Savannah and his friends was like, nah, like, we not gonna go home. Like, stop being boring. Like, we already made it all the way out here. Like, no, we camping here. Now, me personally, I'm with the brother. I'm going home. I'll pick y'all up tomorrow. Now, after like an hour or two of walking, they could not find the camping area. So one of the brother's friends suggested them to just camp right there and then head back in the morning. Now, Savannah's brother, he still ain't having it. He like, y'all, I got a bad feeling. Like, I think we should go. Like, I don't like this. And, you know, they calling him a wuss. They still calling him a wuss, whatever. So they all decide to set up camp. They setting up camp at this point. You know, they're getting comfortable. They're eating hot dogs, telling stories, whatever. Now, they end up, like, going to sleep. Savannah and her brother share a tent. And at around, like, 2:45 in the morning, Savannah hears her brother outside of the tent calling, like, saying, come here, Savannah. Like, come here. Like, I need your help. And at first, I just got goosebumps. But at first, she's like, bro, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you calling me? Like, what? So she gets up and she opens the tent, half awake. She opens the tent and she's like, bro, where are you? Like, what are you doing? And she hears her brother say it again, like, come here. Like, I need you. I'm by the tree. I need your help. So she opens her eyes and that's when she sees her brother facing, like, his back is facing her. So she can't even see her brother's face. She just sees his back. I have freaking goosebumps. Can y'all see that? I hate that feeling. She just sees like his back facing her. So she's like, what are you doing? Like, you know, cause she's still thinking this is her brother. And then like maybe like 2 minutes of having conversation with whatever that was, her brother is still in the tent with her. And he goes, what are you doing? And she's like, like she literally freezes. And he's like, bro, like, are you good? And she's like, so she looks back at her brother and then turns around to look at like him outside. He's not there anymore, y'all. And from there, problems just started to arise. Everybody is up at this point and you just hear like everyone's just like confused, asking what is going on. And so Savannah goes like, if you hear me call you, I'm in my tent, do not answer. That is not me. Like, that's not me. So, like 30 minutes later, Savannah's brother's friend, he's having a full-fledged conversation with whoever he's talking to. Because at this point, whatever it is like shape-shifting into them. But it never shows its face. It's always like turned the other side, the other way. Savannah in the tent is just trying to convince everybody to stay in their tent. Just like lock up the tent, just stay awake until morning, and they're out of there. At this point, day is breaking. It's like 6 in the morning and they finally leave the tent and they see one of their friends just shaking like backwards and forth. Obviously, like not all the way there. They literally had to force him to get up to make it back to the car. And you would think, okay, that's it. They had a crazy night. They were lost in the woods because they didn't stay on the trail. I think that this is the best this slime is going to get. I mean, it's a little more stretchy And I mean, it's definitely not pokey. So they're literally lost, and they don't make it to the car. They don't make it to their car until about like 9:30. Remember, they woke up and started moving around like 6:30, and they didn't make it into their car until like 9:30. They were all freaked out, disoriented. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Anyways, they were all freaked out. That's all we gotta say. And yeah, they never went on a trip to the mountains again. And then when they made it back into the car to look where they were at, they couldn't find it on the map. They couldn't find it on the satellite, the map, Google Maps. They couldn't find it nowhere. So God knows where they was at. Like, only God knows. Safe to say, this is why I don't go camping. And if I ever was to go camping, it would be in my backyard. What y'all think about this slime? Y'all think I fixed it? I don't know. I feel like it's definitely more stretchy, but it just doesn't poke. And it still smells really good. Like,
let's read another scary story that was DM'd to us. A few years ago, we lived in South Africa. We moved into a new house and everything felt normal for a few months. But after a few months, weird stuff started going on. Like, our stuff would start going missing. We didn't think much of it at all. I started getting sick a lot and I would be tired a lot and throwing up a lot. We had load shedding and my sister's friend said she wanted to come over. My parents were outside busy with food and we went in to get changed, and while we were getting ready, we heard something in the closet. We didn't really think much of it, but after that, a lot of weird stuff started happening, like when my brother's friend came over for a sleepover. Me and my sister were watching a movie and we heard screaming coming from the kitchen. We tried opening the door, but it didn't want to open. A few minutes later, we finally got it to open and my brother and his friend were crying with a small mark around their necks, but everyone thought we were making this up. Until things got really bad. Me and my brother shared a small room and my older sister had her own room. She came to sleep in my bed every night because she said she felt unsafe whenever she would wake up in the middle of the night. When we would wake up in the middle of the night, it felt like someone was staring at us, and our Bible would just close on its own. We had it open on our page that we felt safe with. After we thought things got better and invited one of my friends over, we watched a movie until we fell asleep. At 3 a.m., she started yelling and crying that she wanted to go home. It looked like she was really scared. My mom would feel someone get in her bed while no one was at home except her. One night, me and my sister decided that we were going to sleep in her room, thinking maybe it would be okay in there. Above her bed, she had some lights, and while I was trying to sleep, I heard someone breathing in my ear, and I started screaming. My grandma came in and said it's nothing, but after she went away, it happened again, and I slowly woke my sister up, but I told her to move to the other side of the bed. But when she moved, every light in the room started flickering, and suddenly she was against the wall and screamed. I went under the covers crying and screaming. My dad came running in, and while screaming lines from the Bible, my dad and I closed the door, and as we walked back to my parents' room, we heard scratching coming from my sister's room. And my sister told my dad that she saw what looked like a woman in a wedding dress, and there was blood on her gown, and her teeth were showing, and there was blood dripping everywhere. And the thing is, we didn't even watch horror movies back then, so my parents knew we were telling the truth. After that, the door stayed closed, and every time we would walk past the door, it felt like someone was looking at us. My sister went to stay with my grandma and grandpa, and after that, we moved away from the house. We went back after 1 year and talked to the family who was living there, and they had a baby, and the woman said her baby would have marks all over her body, and her other daughter was living in my sister's old room, and she said that her daughter didn't even want to go in there. Whatever was in that house, I hope I never experience again. It is freaking creepy, and I think that house just needs to be torn down, probably. Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. When I was younger, around 9 or 10, I used to share a room with my sister, but she got sick of me, so we moved me into another room. Every night around midnight, I kept hearing something under my bed, but was too scared to look underneath. In my mind, if I hid my entire body under the pillow and blanket and put my arms in a circle around my head, I would be safe. I waited for what felt like hours, but was only probably a few minutes and peeked out. When I looked at our kitchen table, which was right outside my room, I saw not one, not two, but 5 ghosts all around the table talking. It was like all of the ghosts in the neighborhood came to our house to catch up. I was terrified and hid under my blankets and pillows, but still heard the whispers of someone under my bed. I passed out listening to that voice every night for the next year and a half until I finally convinced my parents to make me and my sister share a room again. The next time, when I was 10 or 11, I was taking a bath and just laying in the water with my face out and eyes closed. Then something felt really off. I got the feeling I was being watched. I figured it was my mom or sister asking how much longer I'll be, but when I opened my eyes, there was an old woman in our mirror staring at me with the most evil expression I have ever seen a person give a child. I immediately screamed at the top of my lungs. My mom and dad rushed in and the old lady was gone. I tried telling them what happened, but they said it was just my imagination and asked if I wanted to go to therapy. I never saw the old lady again, but I showered every night after that. The next time, me and my sister were playing outside. Something you should know about me is if there are no parents or grown-ups around, I made myself the protector. But me and my sister were playing outside in the kid pool, and mind you, I was probably 8 and my sister 12. We have a wooden fence all the way around the backyard. No one can see unless they look through a hole or jump up and hang on. Anyway, we were playing and I got that uneasy feeling again and looked at the back of the fence. There was a hole to see through, and when I looked at the hole, I saw an eyeball staring at us. My sister screamed when she saw it, and I jumped into protective mode and ran to the fence to tell the creep off. Maybe keep him there till my dad got outside. But when I went over there, there was nothing there. Like no one had been in the alley for days. There were no shoe prints, nothing. My dad and neighbor went through trying to find anything showing we were making it up, but nothing was there. We didn't play outside again until years later. Last one, I had become a live-in nanny for my friend's sister. They lived in the middle of nowhere and had a family thing to go to, so I stayed back to pick up the house. I was at the sink, which had a glass window above it, but faced the laundry room, and I could see the reflection of the half-bath window. I'm listening to music and having fun doing the dishes when I look up and see a head, neck, and shoulders in the bathroom window reflection. I gasp and turn around to the window and see nothing. I grab a weapon and go outside to check it out, and that's when I see there is no way someone could have been standing there with the window so high and the ground so low. I went back into the house and screamed, "Get out," with tears running down my cheeks, then went back outside and called my mom until they came back home. When they got home, I told them what happened, and we all tried laughing it away. It was hard to sleep there for a while, but thankfully I never saw it again. And this all happened in Kansas? And isn't Kansas like part of the Appalachian Mountains? If it is, then all of these stories make a lot of sense. But the one where she was laying in bed and saw all those ghosts like around her kitchen table, I think I would have a heart attack. This happened when I was very small and my mom worked night shifts far from home. Every night when she left, I would sleep in her bed because it felt comforting while she was gone. My dad usually would check up on me at night while my mom was gone, peeking his head and a bit of his body to see if I was all right. The one morning I was watching Peppa Pig and they made a scarecrow for their garden. Since we had a garden, I thought it would be a good idea to also make one with my mom. We eventually made one and had it in our garden. It was quite small, maybe 3 or 4 feet. Ever since we made it, I would start seeing shadow figures in the corner of my eye. At night, I would also see this 7-foot stick figure at my doorway doing the same peeking thing my dad did. I was very scared and told my mom about it. My mom believed me and we tore the scarecrow apart. Ever since then, I never saw anything like that. Finally, a parent that believes their child, y'all. But I definitely think something may have attached itself to that scarecrow. And it's a good thing that they tore it apart.
Hi, we meet again. Do you guys remember in 2023 seeing this picture? I remember this was all over my For You page of this girl driving her car that resulted in a collision that ended the life of this bride on her wedding day. She passed away in her wedding dress. And the behavior of the girl after the fact, you're not gonna like her, I'll just say that. Samantha Miller was 34 years old from Charlotte, North Carolina. April 28th of 2023 at Foley Beach in South Carolina was the most special day of her entire life. It was her wedding day. She married the love of her life, 36-year-old Eric Hutchinson, in a beach wedding. And that day, as often is for a lot of people on their wedding day, was incredibly meaningful to them. Eric said that it was the best night of his life. The two of them had been together since 2019, but from day one of their relationship, Samantha knew that Eric was the guy that she would marry. Her family adored Eric and his family also completely fell in love with Samantha. She's been described as someone who had a magnetic pull to those around her because she was such a happy, energetic, positive person that just by being around her, you would automatically leave in a better mood than when you first saw her. And their wedding day was everything they could have hoped for and more. Surrounded by friends and family at the end of the night, just after 10 p.m., Samantha and Eric hopped on a golf cart. They were both sitting at the back when she looked at him and said, "I want this day to last forever." In the car was also Benjamin Garrett and his 17-year-old son. They were driving Samantha and Eric back to their Airbnb for the night, first night as newlyweds, but they would not make it. 20 minutes into their drive, the golf cart was driving at approximately 25 miles per hour when they were struck by a vehicle driving 65 miles per hour, completely crushing the golf cart, flipping it over on its side, and sending all 4 people that were in the cart flying in the air up to 100 yards away from the crash. Around the same time, Samantha's mother and sister had made it back to where they were staying that was pretty close by to where the crash happened, and they started to hear the utter chaos. Police sirens, ambulances with their sirens on and lights on, rushing over to the accident. Samantha's mom heard the sound of an ambulance, and something in her gut told her that something bad had happened to her daughter. As soon as she heard the commotion, she started running barefoot towards where the noise was coming from, screaming out for her daughter. Neighbors described hearing the crash as not only one of the worst sounds that they had ever heard, but also one of the loudest. And the crime scene was horrific. Samantha's mom, Lisa, was still unaware of who exactly was hurt and to what extent. But knowing that all 4 people that were once in the golf cart were about to be transferred over to the hospital, she rushed over there to be there when Samantha arrived. Benjamin, his son, Samantha, and Eric all suffered extensive injuries. Their injuries were so terrible and there were so many of them that it was hard to tell exactly what each person had wrong with them at the crash. They were fading in and out. It was pure chaos, pure panic. All 4 of them were placed in ambulances to rush them over to the hospital. All ambulances had their sirens on, driving as fast as possible to get them to the medical attention that they very much needed. But there was one ambulance that was not driving with the same urgency as the others. One ambulance that did not have their sirens nor their lights on. That one was the one that Samantha Miller was in, and they were driving with their sirens and their lights off because it was too late. Samantha had already passed. 34-year-old Samantha Miller had been pronounced deceased on her wedding night in her wedding dress after living the happiest day of her entire 34 years on this earth. Her brother Benjamin was also rushed into emergency surgery. He would luckily make it, and his 17-year-old son would be okay as well. Eric Hutchinson was also taken into surgery and then placed in critical care. Doctors were not sure if he was going to be able to make it through the night, but luckily he would. And when he did eventually wake up, he did not remember anything in regards to the crash. But he woke up, looked at his mom's face, and could immediately tell that something was wrong. The first thing that he asked was, "Where's Sammy? Where's Sammy?" That's when the news of Samantha's loss was given to him, and devastated does not even come close to describing what he must have felt in that moment. Back at the scene, the first thing was figuring out what happened and why, and the answers were right in front of them. The gray Toyota Camry, also completely destroyed, was right in front of them, as was the person who was driving the car, 25-year-old Jamie Lee Komorowski. She was left completely unharmed. That night, Jamie had been out by herself, stopping by different restaurants, consuming a lot of beverages, too many, one after another, and after every single one, she would pay for her tab, hop in her car, and drive herself to the next place. She had so many that when she was tested, her results came back to be over 3 times the legal limit. And just by looking at the state of her, it was obvious that she wasn't right because of her behavior. Like I mentioned, she was driving at 65 miles per hour on a road where the speed limit was 25 miles per hour. And even after the crash, she was so completely unaware of the damage that she had just caused, jumping out of her car saying, "Something hit me, something hit me." And when officers got there to talk to her, Jamie said that yes, she had been out that night, but she said that she just wanted to go home. She just wanted to talk to her boyfriend, and she wanted to go home because she did nothing wrong. She said that she was driving home, which makes no sense because she was driving the complete opposite direction. And when they put her in handcuffs, she had to be told 3 different times why she was being arrested. Before answering any further questions or cooperating with officers at all for that matter, Jamie asked for an attorney, and she was taken to the station for questioning, where she was charged with 3 counts of felony driving resulting in great bodily harm or death and 1 count of reckless homicide. And while she was in custody, the way that Jamie would talk to her dad on their recorded phone calls is so incredibly disturbing because she was fully making it out to seem like she was the victim in this situation, showing such a concerning and alarming lack of remorse. She would say to her dad, "I can't believe this is my life. My whole life is going to be over. I want it to be over. Why me? Why me?" She said, "Oh my God, I just can't believe this happened to me. Why me? I'm going to be here for years and years and years and years. Why is the media so involved in this case? Everybody is going to be so mean to me when I get out of here. Ugh." And her dad would tell her to tough it up and suck it up. He told her that she likely was going to have to do time, but that things would be okay because they would figure it out, saying, quote, "You don't need to be sorry, Jamie. There's nothing to be sorry about. This is what happened, and we are going to take care of it. We don't care about what happened. We don't care. We care only about you," end quote. And he also said that it's unfortunate that, quote, "bad things happen to wonderful people," end quote, referring to his daughter getting arrested and saying that's what happened, and then telling her that all she had to do was make the best out of the situation. I'm sorry. I get that you want to be there for your daughter, fully understand that. If you want to be there for her, show her that you support her, fine. But do not lie to her face and tell her that what happened was not her fault. Do not sit there, look her in the face, lie to her, and tell her that this was an accident when what it was a direct consequence of her own actions and her own decisions. And I think it shows a clear picture of the kind of people that both Jamie and her father are for attempting to minimize the situation and for making it sound like Jamie was the victim in this situation, a situation that she put herself in, mind you, and a situation that she had full control over and would not have happened if she would not have gone behind the wheel of her car. Jamie tried to get out on bail, her dad assuring her that her future would be okay and that she would be totally fine and that she did not have to worry about her future, which led to Jamie asking if her parents were going to be there to pick her up when she got out of bail because she did not think that she was going to go to prison. She told them she was excited to be able to go back home because then all of this could be over. And to that, her mother said, "That's great, baby, that's great." Jamie's dad was very wealthy. Because of that, they were able to afford a very good attorney, but ultimately, one thing remains true, and that is that nobody else but her was at fault fully for the accident. Jamie Lee Komorowski, at 27 years old, eventually pled guilty to her charges in a courtroom, acknowledging that she had mental health struggles that caused her to act the way that she did, saying that she was, quote, "devastated and deeply ashamed and sorry," end quote, for what she did. She said, quote, "I wish I could go back and undo this terrible tragedy, but I cannot. I will live the rest of my life with intense regret for what happened that night," end quote. She was sentenced to 25 years in a South Carolina state prison. As a result of a financial settlement reached in connection to the crash, Samantha's husband, Eric, is also to receive $863,000. Samantha's parents have since then spoken out, saying that they will never be capable of forgiving Jamie, knowing that her actions took away the person they loved most. And Eric Hutchinson has spoken out, remembering Samantha, saying, quote, "On the golf cart, she told me she didn't want the night to end and I kissed her on her forehead. And the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital," end quote. In regards to Jamie, he has said, quote, "I do think she's sorry. However, that does not change the fact that Sam's not here. My wife's not here. The family we planned, all of our injuries. So that will take some time for sure," end quote. It makes me so angry. It makes me so angry, not only for Samantha and her family and her husband, but for every single person that has ever lost someone or has gone very badly injured because a person that should not have been driving decided to get behind the wheel of the car. It's absurd. But that is all I have for this video. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Samantha's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
You want to hear some scary shit? So, our next story takes place in Tucson, Arizona, and was sent in by one of the paranormal baddies, who has a friend who sent in a customer to her, which happened to be a young male soldier. Now, he had questions on whether he should re-enlist in the military or, go on about his life. Mind you, this is around the time of, the recent wars. He had other inquiries also, about fathering children, and, a love life. And just like with everything, there is duality. Everything went great until he asked, should he re-enlist into the military? Silhouette had saw his death. But she just let him know that no, that will not be a good idea and that he should find something else to do. The soldier stated that, his friends depended on him and they're loyal, they're comrades, and he's going to go into the trenches with them again. So she tells him hey, some of your friends are not your friends. But he ignores her and he goes to do what he wanted to anyway. About a year and a half later, the clairvoyant is, on her way home, and she sees the young soldier on the sidewalk trying to get her attention. She sees him quite a few times. The fourth time she saw him, he was sitting in the passenger seat with her, and he held his head and disappeared. Now, this didn't spook her because she is clairvoyant, so she was used to this type of thing. She got in contact with the mutual friend and asked her what happened, and she proceeded to tell her that, he had sustained a head injury in war. He was sent to a hospital in Florida. He checked himself out and literally walked from Florida to Arizona. There he found out that his sergeant had been sleeping with his mother, and it ended up in his parents divorcing. So with the head deficits that caused some mental issues and what was going on in life, the young soldier unalived himself. Pow pow to the head. Now, I am unsure if Silhouette was able to contact the soldier again, or he just wanted her to know that, hey, you were right. Moral of the story, don't ask questions if you already got your mind made up. And if you do ask those questions, take heed to the warning. I wouldn't want you being a character in one of my stories. That's some scary shit.
Someone in the comments asked for a story about the Hatman. So this story came from someone named Ace, and she said she grew up in Buffalo, New York, but for a while her father had a house in Albion, New York, which is a smaller, more rural country town, and his house was older. She had to go over there sometimes on the weekends because her parents were split up, and this one particular night, it's winter, they had to play inside because it was freezing outside. So it's her dad, her sister, her cousin Erica, and her, and they decided to play hide and seek. To make the game spookier, they had turned off all the lights in the house besides the Christmas tree, which was kind of illuminating the bottom of the staircase. And so it's her turn to be the seeker, and she counts down, and then she goes to find everybody. She sees at the top of the stairs a shadow crouching down, like near the railing. So she decides it's her dad because it's a bigger shadow, and she starts climbing the stairs to go approach him. Climbing up, and the shadow is illuminated by the glow of the Christmas tree at the bottom of the stairs. And she gets up to it, and she sees it crouched down, and she taps it, and she says, "Gotcha," but her hand goes right through it. She can barely see anything, but clearly this is her father. So she taps it again, and her hand goes right through it again. And she's like, "Dad," and this thing starts standing up in front of her. She said she was frozen in fear as she watched this thing stretch out. It was so tall that it had to bend its head to not hit the ceiling. She couldn't make out any distinctive features, but she could tell it was wearing a long type trench coat and a hat. She described it as saying, if Jeepers Creepers had a shadow, that's what it would look like. So she screams, and immediately the lights turn on downstairs. Her father comes running up, and she's telling him that she just saw somebody standing in front of her in the hallway. He flips on all the lights. There's nobody there, but he doesn't believe in the paranormal, so he grabs a baseball bat. She said he was running from room to room looking for an intruder because that's what in his head he assumed it must have been. He doesn't find anyone in any of the bedrooms, so he runs upstairs into the attic and doesn't find anything there either. She says, "I fully believe this was an entity. I swear this really happened." She said, "I've researched this. I found other stories online of people who swear they've seen the Hatman, but I still don't really understand what it is." She was sharing this to see if anybody else had an experience with the Hatman, or if anyone has any insight as to its true nature. This is her real name. She'll be seeing the comments, and let me know if you have any thoughts for her, or if you've got a spooky, scary story. I would love to read it.
I've never liked driving at night. The way the world narrows to just two beams of light. It's too quiet, too empty. But that night, I had no choice. I'd stayed at Anna's place longer than I should have. We'd had wine, talked, fought. Again. I don't even remember what about anymore, just the usual things you say when you know a friendship is dying and neither of you want to admit.
Oh, God.
It does happen, though, doesn't it? It was sad, but we just didn't seem that close. We were drifting apart, which is crazy. I'd once removed a tampon with my hands when she couldn't find the string once, and now we were snapping at each other. But I'd left before I'd said something that I'd regret. One of us had to be the reasonable one, after all. The road was almost pitch black, winding through trees that seemed to lean a little too close. My headlights picked out a lonely stretch of pavement ahead, and then I heard it. Ding, ding, ding. The seatbelt alert.
Oh, no.
I glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. I laughed it off, nervously. Maybe I'd left my bag there? No, nothing. Just the seatbelt light flashing red. I reached over and buckled it anyway.
What is going on?
So it recognises that something sat in it.
Oh, horrid.
Yeah. Dinging stopped for a while. About 20 minutes later, it started again. Ding, ding, ding. I glanced over and my stomach flipped. The belt was unbuckled. I stared at it for a long moment before reaching out to fasten it again. But this time, I noticed that the fabric on the car seat was damp, cold, like it had been outside in the rain.
Oh, no.
I pulled my hand back quickly. The radio crackled, Just static, loud, disorientating. I jumped and twisted the dial, but it wouldn't turn off. It kept scanning one channel after another, all white noise. And then it settled. Not on music, not on a voice, just a faint, rhythmic sound. Breathing, but not mine. I turned the car off on the side of the road and sat in the dark, which is something I highly recommend you don't do. The static faded slowly until it was silent. No breathing, no seatbelt alarm, nothing. I exhaled, suddenly aware that I'd been holding my breath. When I turned the car back on, everything seemed normal again, so I just kept on driving. But the car felt heavier, if that makes sense. I glanced in my rearview mirror and... what was that? I squinted. It was black. The car was in darkness, so that made sense, but I was sure I could see the curve of her face.
Oh, bloody hell.
The flash of eyes blinking at me. I drove under a street lamp and the light shone in for a second. Nothing. It must have been a trick of the light. I got home sometime after 2 a.m. I don't remember the last stretch of road, only the sense of relief when I pulled into my apartment lot and saw the familiar streetlight flickering above my space. I didn't even look in the back seat or the passenger seat next to me. I just locked the car doors and went inside. The next morning, I needed to go to the grocery store, so I left my apartment and hopped back into my car. The day was sunny and bright. The events of the night before hadn't even crossed my mind. As I was about to start the engine, I noticed something in the corner of my eye. Something was on the seat. Not an object. A dark stain on the fabric, in the vague outline of where someone would have been sitting. It looked old, set in, and then I saw that the glove box was slightly open. I reached inside.
No.
There was a photograph. No!
Don't do it.
Burn your car, move to Argentina.
Yeah, yes.
There was a photograph. Torn. It was me and Anna. We were sitting on her balcony, wine glasses in hand. I looked annoyed, but she looked happy. I don't remember it being taken. I don't remember printing it, but it was real, creased and water damaged, as if somebody had held it in wet hands. My chest tightened. Suddenly, I noticed something else. On the passenger seatbelt, a faint smear of dried red, almost invisible unless you looked directly at it. And then I remembered. I really remembered. I hadn't driven home from Anna's that night. I'd driven away. After the fight, after the wine, after the sharp thing in my hand, after she fell, after she begged me for a ride to the hospital, after she begged me to save her life, I left her there. As the crumpled picture fell from my trembling fingers, I began to lift my head to look in the rearview mirror. And I thought how ironic it was that even though I'd left Anna, it seemed that she'd gotten her lift from me anyway.
Oh!
The end.
Ah! Oh, no!
Some of y'all know this already, but for those of you who don't know, my mother passed away when I was young. I was 16. And because of that, I went through a very, very, very dark time in my life, particularly around the time I turned 18. My mother's death was really, really, really getting to me this one particular day. It was right before my birthday. It was like nobody remembered. And usually the only person who really do remember my birthday is my mother. So like I was in a very bad spot in my life. I had woke up with an attitude, like a bad attitude. So bad that like my god sister had called me to wake me up because we supposed to be going out. And she heard my voice and she was like, oh no, you can tell that demon to go back to sleep and try it again. I'm gonna call you in about an hour. And that pissed me off, but you know what? I got it because like for real, I woke up angry. It was an anger that I just could not put my finger on. Like I know why I'm upset and angry, but this is an anger that is not me. So what do? I go and I take a shower and I pray in the water because whatever the hell got a hold of me, I'm gonna need it to let it go. I'm gonna need it to let go because I don't never snap on my sister like that. Never. I felt so bad. I cried in the shower. That's how bad I felt. I get out the shower, I get dressed. It seemed like every little thing was wrong. Like, first of all, the heel on my shoe broke. Then I switched to some combat boots. Well, guess what? The zipper on the combat boots broke. So then I had to change up my whole outfit to match some other boots. And I didn't like those boots because of the way they made my foot look. But they went with the outfit, so whatever. I'm really not liking this outfit. I don't like these fucking shoes. Let me move on to my hair. I don't know about nobody else's hair, but my hair holds heat. It holds a crazy amount of heat. It gets so hot that there are beauticians who will literally put on a heat glove because my hair is hot. Not the utensil is hot, my hair is hot. So, anyways, listen, my hair can hold a curl with absolutely no problems. This particular day, don't want to hold shit. It don't want to do nothing. I tried to make it go straight, literally went over a section 2 times. 5 seconds later, it was poofing right back up. Didn't understand what was going on. I was really getting done with the day. And then I had to like really stop and take a deep breath. And I was like, okay, you got to focus. Because this is really not you. I got my hands on either side of the face bowl. I bow my head, I get to praying. And I'm for real, like, I need whatever is around me to reveal itself, because this ain't right and you're not gonna ruin my day. I'm already having a hard time. Who are you and what do you want? Something whispers in my ear, chaos. Whoa now. We need to go back to go, try again. We need to redo. What happened? So I hear a chuckle, like a low menacing laugh, but it's pleased. And I look up in the mirror and I see me, but it ain't me. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I know I see me, but me don't normally have black eyes. And me don't have a smile that go from ear to ear. Me has a pointy chin, but not one that is razor sharp. I am looking at me, but me is not me. Who the fuck are you? Because we are not we. The thing cock its head to the side, and it says, what do you mean? I am you and you are me. We are we. I've always been here. You don't recognize me? Now I'm freaking the fuck out. Because, bitch, why are you talking back? Why are you talking back? The being in the window, in the mirror say, how do you not recognize me? I am you. And I said, no. Nope. I don't like this. What did I do? I opened up a portal. She said, no, you didn't. You just refused to let me come out and play. I just want to come out and play. And it was something about the way that she said it. Like, it was something about the way that she said it that really, for real, made a chill go up my spine, around my brain, back down to the tip of my toes, and do it all over again. I know this voice. I don't want to hear this voice. I don't even want to face the voice. So I walk out the bathroom. As I walk out the bathroom, my god sister is walking through my front door. And I'm just looking at her like, oh shit, I ain't got no time to get rid of this. Like this, I'm gonna have to either deal with this and hide it for the rest of the day, or I'm gonna have to do a ritual and she just gonna have to bear witness. And the way she said my name, I don't know why it pissed the being off, but I guess it was because it wasn't being acknowledged. So when she was like, hey, Katie did, I looked at her and I was like, excuse you, it's Kat. And then she looked at me and she was like, oh, fuck no. Phoenix, what is you doing here? I'm sorry, what? Who? What are you? Ma'am? My god sister said, oh, you ain't think I recognize you? Girl, I see you a million miles away. Phoenix, go back to sleep. Leave her alone. Today is her day. Leave her alone. Whatever it is, let it go until tomorrow. Now, me and Phoenix is frozen in time and space, because what the fuck you mean you know who the fuck you looking at? How do you know the difference? We squint our eyes, and my sister looked back at us, and she was like, oh, you wondering how I know? First and foremost, Catherine's eyes are brown or green. Phoenix's eyes are black, damn near reddish looking. And you look like you finna kill something. On top of the fact that normally, yes, Kat is tall, but when you're coming to play, she looked like a giant. So I know something is going on. Go back to sleep, leave my sister alone. Pissed us clean the fuck off. Because first of all, who is you talking to? Why is you even, like, she was rolling her eyes and rolling her neck and her fingers wagging in the air. And girl, who is you talking to? You know what? I just turned around and I walked back in the bathroom and I started praying again, because like, what you mean you didn't seen her before? Why you ain't tell me that you didn't seen her before? I have done everything that I possibly could to shield my god sister from Phoenix, and what you mean you didn't seen her? Excuse me, what? A couple of more deep breaths and seriously calming myself down, I looked back in the mirror, and Phoenix said back to me, why you just can't let me play? And to that, I say, because, bitch, you're chaos. You are pure chaos. And I ain't got no time. I ain't got it. I ain't got it. Today is supposed to be a good day. We're going to have a good day, and that's going to be it. And then the craziest thing that I ever seen happen was that Phoenix started reaching through the mirror, and her hand was on my throat. And now I'm battling with my inner self. I don't know what the fuck to do. I was so mad at so many different things that I wasn't even saying out loud, but my sister stood by the bathroom door and she named every last one of them off. And it shocked me to my core because I had not talked to her about none of this, but here she is. Here she is, rattling all this stuff off. And at that very moment, Phoenix felt seen. And not just seen, she also felt heard. And then for my sister to like reach out, like literally reach out into the ether and say, Phoenix, I hear you. That's why I'm here, remember? You not alone. And like really slammed her back into her cage. It was absolutely insane. It was a lock that I couldn't even put onto Phoenix's cage myself. There are so many times where I lose control, and the first thing I think of is my god sister Marnissa. I love this woman to death. I looked in the mirror, Phoenix looked at me, she said, fine, go have a good time. I'll be back later.
Have you ever heard of the Demon House? In November of 2011, Latoya Ammons, her mother, Rosa Campbell, and Latoya's 3 children, who were 7, 9, and 12, moved into a house in Gary, Indiana. Shortly after moving in, so in December, they realized that flies were swarming the porch and they wouldn't go away. But this was the least strange thing that they encountered after moving into this house. They noticed that there were footsteps going on in the basements, doors would creak, and Latoya even said that she saw a shadow man who was pacing in her living room. Rosa, Latoya's mother, said that she was choked by an unknown force. One of her children claimed to have levitated in her bed. They sat and prayed with her until she was able to go back to sleep. Her daughter didn't remember anything that had happened. That one of her sons also said that he was like thrown across the room. The younger son also had a very scary incident. His eyes rolled into the back of his head and in a growling voice said, "It's time to die and I will kill you." Latoya was obviously terrified of what was going on in her house. She reached out to a doctor. This was Dr. Geoffrey, I cannot say his last name, but on April 19th of 2012, he visited the house and he reported that the family's behavior was delusional. The children were taken to the hospital and the older kids, they were acting okay, but the younger one was thrashing and screaming like something was wrong. In 2012, the Department of Child Services was called, and allegedly some of the DCS workers witnessed the children walking backwards up a wall. Another police officer investigating also said that he encountered paranormal activity while investigating this house. There's even this picture of the house. You can pretty clearly see that there is like this shadowy figure in the window. The family would hire a reverend to come in and perform an exorcism on the house. He would end up performing 3 exorcisms. One of them was on Latoya herself. 2 of these exorcisms were performed in English and 1 in Latin, but apparently this didn't stop the hauntings. The family moved to Indianapolis in 2012. I think it is important to note that any other tenants who had lived in the house hadn't complained of supernatural or paranormal happenings. Also, the landlord who owned the house, he had also never encountered anything paranormal in the house, and he believed that she just didn't want to live in the house anymore and wanted to get out of the lease. A psychologist also interviewed the children, and they determined that the children were just trying to listen to their mom, and their mom was on this, but personally, that picture kind of proves a lot to me. Now, I am an adamant believer in the paranormal, and I think that paranormal things happen all around us, but it's not just Latoya who's saying this, and it's not just me who believes her. A police officer who was investigating also says that he encountered paranormal activity in this house, so I just kind of believe her. But what do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Follow for more creepy things.
Stepnica is a gorgeous town right in the heart of Slovenia, situated right along the Sava River, which is one of the longest rivers in Europe. The section of the Sava that flows past Stepnica was a popular destination for kayakers and canoeists up until 2008, when a hydroelectric dam was built across it, creating a sort of dead end for anyone trying to go through that section of the river. They would have to stop at the dam, get out, walk around, and then pick up the river on the other side, or that would mark the end of their trip that day. In 2008, while this dam was still under construction, the mayor of Sevnica, who was in favor of the construction of this dam, he understood that this was kind of a bummer for the people in town. While the dam itself was going to provide more electricity for the town, it did kind of end an era. And so he decided he would organize a final trip down the Sava River past the dam while they could still go right past it. And he was calling this trip the Final Descent. And so he went all around town asking people if they wanted to come, and he finally recruited 27 other people to come with him on this final trip. And so a few weeks later, on July 3rd, after all preparations were made, the mayor and the rest of his crew, they made their way upstream to this loading area where 4 canoes have been set out for them. And the staff people that had actually provided these canoes, they offered the group life jackets, and virtually everyone in the group turned it down. It's unclear why they turned down the life jackets, but one could guess that, the river itself was incredibly calm and they were not expecting to be on the water for very long, and so they just decided they didn't need one. And so after all 28 people got into their canoes, 7 people per canoe, they pushed off the shore and they began their slow trip down the river. And the mayor had actually hired a photographer to come along with them to document their journey. So as soon as they take off, the photographer is looking around, taking pictures and filming. The weather was beautiful and the water was calm and everything was just going really, really well. But about 15 or 20 minutes into their journey, they turned this corner and they got a clear view of the dam, which was about 1,000 feet away from them at the time. Now, the dam was not done yet, but it was pretty close to being done. And so the actual structure of the dam, it was built. And so even from 1,000 feet away, it was very obvious to tell that up ahead, there's these big cement archways where the water flows down over this dam. And the whole group pretty much immediately saw they had a problem. The plan, according to the mayor, had been they would get to this dam, but on the left side of the dam, there was going to be a strip of waterway that had not been blocked off yet. Because when this dam was complete, it would completely obstruct the river side to side. But because it wasn't actually done yet, the construction crew had told the mayor that, yep, the left side, there's going to be an area where you can basically just casually go right past. You won't go down the dam. It's totally safe. But here this group is on the water looking at the dam. And even from 1,000 feet away, it was obvious there was no side way to get around the dam. You clearly had to go through the dam or you had to get out and go around the dam. Now, the river was moving very, very slowly. There wasn't a strong current. And so there wasn't some urgent decision that needed to be made about what they were going to do. The group intuitively knew that the right choice here is to, go to the side, get out of your canoes, and either go around or just end the trip right there. But the mayor and a few of the other people in the other canoes got the idea that, hey, why don't we just go over the dam? I know we're not supposed to, and the construction crew explicitly said, don't go over the dam, it's extremely dangerous. But from the looks of it, it doesn't look that bad. And truthfully, it did not look too bad. This was not some enormous dam with some huge drop off. It was actually a pretty small dam where the water kind of went down this fairly small embankment that was maybe 10 or 15 feet long. And at the bottom of this embankment was some semi-rough water. But overall, it just looked like it might be kind of fun to go down this dam, like you'd be going down a slide with your canoe. And so the mayor was really keen on doing this. He made it seem like it was going to be fun, it was going to be an adventure. And so before long, 3 of the 4 canoes were fully on board with the idea of just going over the dam. The 4th canoe that was not prepared to go over the dam had the photographer in it. And they said, we're not comfortable with this, but we'll pull up next to the dam and we'll just film you guys going over the dam. It'll be really cool. And so after making their plans about who was going to do what, the 4 canoes continued down the river. And when they got about maybe 100 or 200 feet away from the entrance to this dam, the 4th canoe with the photographer pulled off on the left side of the river. They got out and the photographer lifted up his camera and he began filming the other 3 canoes as they made their approach into the dam. Now, the video from this photographer that was released to the public, it shows the first of these 3 canoes actually going into the dam. And you see these 7 people on this canoe. They're kind of happy and excited looking. They have nervous anticipation like they're about to start a roller coaster or something. And they're making their way into this dark section inside of the dam. They're basically going through through the gates of the dam where they're going to go down this embankment. And as they go into the darkness, as you begin to lose sight of them, you see the back end of the canoe suddenly pops up because now they're going down the actual dam itself. They start sliding down, and then you hear someone in the canoe start to scream, and then it goes completely silent. And then the video just ends. That canoe, right after it slid down that downslope, it would reach the waters below, but the canoe would capsize, throwing everyone on board into the water. And these 7 people, they didn't even have a chance to catch their breath before they were sucked under. Not only because the water was rough at the bottom of the dam and kind of was churning and pulling them under, but also because this is a hydroelectric dam. And at the bottom of the dam, underneath the water where they were all these big openings to underwater tunnels. And these tunnels functioned like vacuums. It pulled water down inside and then ran the water past a turbine, causing it to spin, and that would generate the electricity. That's what the dam actually did. And so after the water was pushed past this turbine, it would be jettisoned out somewhere else downstream. Now, even though this dam was not fully operational yet, these tunnels and the turbines at the bottom of them, they were operational. So as these 7 people are dumped into these incredibly dangerous waters and they're getting pulled down towards these tunnels, the other 2 canoes, they have no idea what's going on with this first canoe. And so they just continue on and they go over the dam. The second canoe that went down the dam, they also capsized at the bottom. All 7 occupants were thrown out and they were sucked down underwater almost immediately. The third canoe that went over the dam, they did not capsize, and so after they cleared the dam and kind of paddled away, they began looking around for the other 2 canoes that should have already been down there. And there was nobody out in front of them, and so they turned around thinking maybe they're closer to the dam, and they don't see anyone, but they see one of the canoes is completely flipped over, and the other canoe has been broken apart in the churning waters right at the base of the dam, and they see the wood from this canoe just getting tumbled around. And so this third canoe immediately turns and tries to paddle over to the base of this dam to try to start pulling people out of the water. But when they get over there, there's no one there. The 14 people that had been in these 2 canoes, they're gone. Ultimately, 13 of the 14 people that fell in the water that day would perish, and one of the fatalities was the mayor. The only person who survived who fell in the water was actually the mayor's wife, who by some miracle managed to swim out of the grasp of these tunnels under the water and made it to shore. Over the next several days and weeks, police divers were able to eventually find all 13 bodies, one of which had traveled 25 miles away to Croatia. No information was given about the state of the bodies when they were found, and so we don't know if having been sucked down through these tunnels and forced past these underwater turbines played a role in their death. All the public knows is that all or most of these 13 people were sucked down into these tunnels and then they died.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
He traveled across the country to visit some friends, and then he vanished forever. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Aaron Dragonetti. Viewer discretion is advised. Aaron Dragonetti was born in 1982, and at the time of this case, he was 31 years old. He was one of 4 total children in his family, and he actually had a twin brother. His most recent work was working at the Alberta oil patch, and Aaron was someone who traveled a lot, especially internationally. He seemed to have been all over the world. He's described as a really easygoing, very laid-back kind of guy, an extremely hard worker, and coworkers and friends said they rarely ever saw Aaron in a bad mood. In June of 2014, Aaron would fly from where he was staying in British Columbia all the way across the country to Newfoundland. It's called Newfoundland and Labrador is the province. He had some friends out there. He was specifically staying in the St. John's area, and I'm not sure if he met the girl there or if he met her ahead of time, but he started a relationship with a woman named April. And it started pretty quickly after he arrived in June. However, by July of 2014, so like a month or so later, the relationship was over. But Aaron would continue staying in the St. John's area after that. And they can say for sure he was there for at least a couple more weeks. Then it was about 4 o'clock in the morning on an August morning in 2014. Aaron woke up suddenly where he was staying. He alerted the person that he had to leave now because there was a family emergency back at home. And then he left. And then at that point, he was never seen again. Like I said earlier, it was common for him to travel all over the place. It was also common for him to not communicate to anyone for maybe a week or so. But that being said, Aaron would speak to either his twin brother or his mom frequently enough that they noticed when it suddenly stopped. They gave it probably, a little bit of time thinking, okay, he's just somewhere where he can't call maybe. But by November of 2014, the family's like, all right, we've had enough. We can't get a hold of him. He's not calling us back. We're going to report him missing. So they contact the RCMP to report him missing. When they find out that he said he left because of a family emergency, the family was like, we have no idea what that's about. There was never an emergency. When they talked to his friends and other people who had interacted with him, no one knew what this emergency was. Looking into his financials, his bank account had not been touched since that day in August of 2014. So they discovered that he was staying with the mother of the woman he had been dating for a short time. Also living at that house where he was staying was this man here, Gordy Bishop. He was the brother to April Bishop, the woman that Aaron was briefly dating. It was a Facebook post in June, shortly after Aaron got there, where he said, I never brag how real I keep it because it's the best secret. Gordy Bishop responded to that by saying, you're the loser. Y-O-U''RE, sorry. What makes matters even worse is that Gordy Bishop was banished from Newfoundland in 2016. Why? He ran a cop over and dragged her along the road with his car. She survived, was injured, but she lived. Then, he was prosecuted and then banished from the area. So he had a violent history. But that also happened 2 years after Aaron Dragonetti's disappearance. And now at this point, no one knows what happened to him. They are at a loss as to what happened to Aaron. There is what they call a far-flung theory that he may have left Canada to go to Vietnam because he had a friend in Vietnam. However, there is nothing to back that up. They don't have any facts to say that he actually is in Vietnam. It's just a wild guess. The family says they're pretty unclear about what the RCMP has gotten so far. Like, they've requested a copy of the police file for his case, but they've declined to release that to the family because it's technically an ongoing investigation, I guess. Aaron's passport was not used to leave the country. There are no flight records whatsoever showing his name boarding a plane and going anywhere from St. John's. There are a couple of things, though, that might explain that. One, it's possible he used a fake passport. Two, in terms of tracking cell phones, well, he apparently had 2 cell phones. None of them were actually in his name. He was also someone who would frequently change his phone numbers and also change cell phones. And so it's just not out of the question that he may have possibly been able to get a fake passport, because it does seem like there was a little bit of secrecy, going on. He also could have hitched a ride from some random stranger, could have taken a ferry back to the mainland. There would be no records of that. To this day, no one has come forward to state that they may have been the last person to see him. No one has come forward stating that they have seen him at all. There's been no sightings of him. I can understand if this was like the 70s or the 80s where, a person can disappear pretty easily because not everyone had built-in cameras on them at all times. But now, or even back in 2014, everyone had cell phones. Everyone has access to Google and the news. You can watch international news wherever you are. His face would have been out there, and still no one has seen him. The RCMP isn't ruling out foul play, but they also have 0 evidence at this point of foul play, meaning they don't know if he was murdered or not. They can't say. It is entirely possible he made himself disappear. But I go back to, it's really difficult to remain that way, especially if your face is everywhere. Someone somewhere out there has got to know the truth about what actually happened to Aaron Dragonetti back in 2014. Perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Aaron Dragonetti or what may have happened to him, please call 709-729-8000 or 1-800-222-8477.
Has the case of Alisa Lamb been solved, or is there more to it? Now, this case is extremely famous. It has gone viral multiple times all over the internet, and Netflix also did a documentary on it. And most people seem to believe that it has been solved, and unfortunately it was just a very bad set of circumstances that ultimately led to a freak accident. But some people believe that maybe there is more to it. So the story takes place in Los Angeles, specifically at this hotel here called the Hotel Cecil. And this hotel has a very long history, and it's not all good. The hotel has been known to be home to a lot of violence, gruesome crimes, and multiple people taking their own lives. Even Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, once called the Cecil Hotel home for a short amount of time. But then in 2013, we meet Alisa Lamb, and she was a Canadian university student. Now, it is important to note that Alisa was suffering from mental illness. She did have an extensive history dealing with it. And sometimes she was known for not taking her medication, which resulted in her being hospitalized at least one time in the past. But in January of 2013, she made a decision to go visit Los Angeles. She arrived on the 26th of January and 2 days later checked into the Cecil Hotel. Now, initially she had booked a room where she would be sharing with a few different roommates, but very quickly after she checked in, these roommates started complaining of very bizarre behavior coming from her, which resulted in Alisa being moved into her own room. Now, throughout her trip, she was keeping in contact with her family, except on January 31st, that contact stopped. And when her parents did not hear from her for an extended period of time, they became extremely worried. This was out of character for Alisa, so they decided to report her as missing. The police arrived to the hotel and searched it as much as they legally could at the time without completely disrupting everyone's stay, but there was no sign of Alisa anywhere. About a week later, the search was intensified even more, with the LAPD sharing her flyer all over the city. Then a week after that, on February 13th, LAPD decided that they needed to release the last known video footage of Alisa. And this was the footage that made the case go absolutely viral. And it was because of how odd Alisa's behavior was when this was taken. Now, this video footage was taken on January 31st, the last known day that Alisa was seen alive. And in the video footage, you can see her frantically running into the elevator, almost as if she was being chased by someone. But if she was being chased by someone, that person never appeared on the video. She runs into the elevator and is obviously very panicked, like she's freaking out, and she even starts pressing almost every button possible. At one point, she starts peeking out of the elevator to see if anyone else is in the hallway. And eventually she walks out of the elevator as the doors close behind her. And immediately the theories were swirling all over the internet. One of them being obviously that she was maybe being chased by someone, while others suggested that maybe she was under the influence of some sort of substance. But when the news came out that she was suffering from mental illness, a lot of people thought that maybe she was suffering from some sort of episode. Then about mid-February, while the search for Alisa was still ongoing, a lot of the people staying at the hotel started to complain about the water. They were saying that the water now had some sort of weird taste and almost appeared to be a black, muddy color. And that was when maintenance workers went upstairs to the roof of the hotel to check on the water supply. And when they opened the tank, that was when they made the horrifying discovery that Alisa was inside one of these tanks face up. And unfortunately, she was no longer alive. And essentially what people were describing in the water was a result of her body decomposing inside of the tank. An autopsy was done on Alisa's body, and it revealed that there was no sign of physical trauma or SA. They did find some traces of prescribed medication as well as ibuprofen, but there were no signs of any illegal substances. But even more alarming to the public was how she could have possibly even gotten into the tank in the first place. Supposedly the doors and the stairs leading to the roof are completely locked and only accessible with staff passkeys. And even if she was able to somehow get through these doors, it would have triggered an alarm. Some suggest that maybe she used the fire escape to make her way to the roof, but that still leaves up for debate as to how she managed to even get inside the tank. Mainly because these tanks did not have any sort of attached ladder to them, and the lid for them were also very heavy. Now, common sense would tell you that Alisa could have potentially been suffering from some sort of manic episode, considering that she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and somehow made her way to the roof, pushed the lid open, and jumped in and unfortunately drowned. But that theory just does not seem like enough of an explanation for a lot of people out there, with many choosing to believe that there was something much more nefarious going on here, especially when you watch the video. And some people even seem to believe that there is some sort of paranormal element involved. But like always, let me know what you guys think. The story of Rebecca Zahau is just one of those cases that does not sit right with me and a lot of other people. Because although authorities seem to believe that she decided to take her own life, there are a lot of strange things in the case that just do not add up. Not to mention that her friends and family do not believe that she would ever choose to do that to herself. But let's go back to the beginning. So Rebecca was born in Burma. Eventually she ended up moving to Nepal, then Germany, before she moved to the United States. In 2008, she began dating this man here. His name was Jonah Shacknick, and he was the CEO of a medical pharmaceutical company. And he also had 3 children from his past 2 marriages. But then in 2011, tragedy struck. Now the couple was living in California at the time. Rebecca was at home with Jonah's youngest son, and she was also there with her teenage sister. Rebecca would later claim that she was in the bathroom and Max was left unattended for a very short amount of time. And during that time, Max somehow fell over the banister over the stairs and suffered some serious injuries. Rebecca's sister called 911 right away, but unfortunately, little Max did not make it. His injuries were just way too much for him to handle. A few weeks later, Max's passing away was ruled as an accident. However, one of the doctors that examined Max at the hospital before he passed away said that it seemed like this was not an accident, almost like he had been suffocated before he fell. But again, ultimately, it was ruled an accident, suggesting that he somehow tripped. But before all of that was revealed, something else happened to Rebecca. So the day after Max passed away, it was July 12th. Now that day, Rebecca dropped off her sister at the airport to catch her flight home. But that same day, she was also picking up Jonah's brother Adam from the airport. Later that evening, the 3 of them plus a friend named Howard all had dinner together. But after dinner, Jonah would go back to the hospital to spend the evening with his son and his ex-wife. And later that evening, reports came from neighbors that there was a lot of loud music happening at the home. Then the next morning, on July 13th at approximately 6:45 a.m., Jonah's brother Adam said that he found Rebecca hanging from the outside balcony. He also said that she was completely undressed, had her hands tied behind her back, and her ankles had also been bound. And this was the balcony where Rebecca was found by Adam. A few minutes later, he called 911, and he also said that he had cut her down from the balcony. He had also texted his brother right away to tell him what had happened. The medics arrived to the scene fairly quickly, but unfortunately, she had already passed away. There was nothing they could do about it. But almost right away, whispers started swirling that maybe foul play was involved here. However, there was no trace of DNA from anyone except Rebecca, which resulted in her passing being ruled as her choosing to end her own life. But during her autopsy, there was some strange information revealed. She had 4 wounds to her head. Now, the main theory to explain this was that when she jumped, the swinging of her body weight could have resulted in her head slamming against the balcony. However, it would have been very unlikely for this to have happened 4 times hard enough for her to sustain injuries. Obviously, her family was not convinced that Rebecca did this to herself, so they requested a second autopsy to be done. And this time, the coroner suggested that manual strangulation was involved and that she did not do this to herself. And he also included evidence suggesting that Rebecca had been SA'd before she passed away. There was also a ton of doubt surrounding the idea as to whether or not she would have been able to tie her ankles and her wrists together before jumping off. But there was one more piece of evidence that was very bizarre. A message had been spray painted on the door of the bedroom leading to the balcony, and it read, "She saved him, can he save her?" And to this day, no one has any idea what that message meant. Now, Rebecca's family was still adamant throughout the entire time that she did not do this, and they actually put pressure on the authorities to focus on Jonah's brother Adam. And they even filed a civil lawsuit against him, claiming that he was responsible for Rebecca's passing, which they ended up winning, but he quickly appealed the decision. And in 2019, both parties decided to settle. And to this day, the reason behind Rebecca's passing has been a huge topic of debate. Some people believe that she did it out of extreme guilt for having had that accident happen under her watch. Some say that she probably felt extremely guilty and responsible for Max's passing, while others believe that maybe she was taken out as a punishment for not being more careful while watching Max. But like always, let me know what you guys think.